Phones on, please. Wanted to welcome everybody that's here tonight. Hopefully, if you intend to speak, that you go ahead and sign the paper here. And later on, get Charlie to swear you in. Board, if you can take a minute and look at the minutes from last meeting and let me know if there's any changes needed or if you want to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Who seconded? You? Good.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, minutes passed.
Sure, big guy.
All right, now whenever you're ready, go on with the first. Well, I'm sorry, we got to swear you in.
If everyone signed in to speak, if you could stand and raise your right hand, please. We got only one? Oh, two? Here they come. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Yes. Thank you. I bet more people get up than
All right. First application of the evening. We have a conditional use permit at 330 North Broadway. So the proposal is a conditional use permit for a professional office in the form of a salon in the R2 zone. The location is kind of interesting. There are two project sites. We have 330 North Broadway, and we have an unaddressed legal lot. You can see the parcel number there. The zone is R2. Surrounding zones are R2, B2, and B3. The lot sizes, we have 0.25 acres for 330 North Broadway and 0.2 acres for that unaddressed legal lot. Direct access is North Broadway for 330 North Broadway and North Court Street for that other lot. And staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. So you can see here our zoning map. You can see how the area is a mix of that R2, B2, and B3. And seen here, you can see a zoomed in aerial view of the project sites. You can see to the west, you have that primary structure where the salon itself would be. And then to the east, you have that parking lot that is servicing that primary use there. So a little bit of background. That application, again, is a conditional use permit for the hair salon on those two properties. This proposal is defined as a professional office, which is listed as a conditional use in the R2 zone. There are previous applications to the Board of Adjustment for this project site. The current owners received a conditional use permit for a professional office back in 2016. That proposal was also for a salon, and it is currently active. And so the reason this conditional use permit is before the board today is because the current owners of the site intend to sell it to a new owner who would reestablish that on-site business under the new ownership. Conditional use permits, with that transfer of ownership, they usually will resolve. They'll dissolve, and they would need to be reestablished by the new owner. So that's what we're seeing here. And the application material states that the applicant does not intend to alter or expand the existing site conditions for the business. So a little bit of information about the proposal and the business itself. The proposal is going to be a 7-chair salon with an estimated 1,500 square feet of floor area. Written material for the application, it does indicate that the use would employ up to 7 staff, and there would not typically be more than 4 staff on any given shift. Site layout, as you can see on the aerial there, the project site, it exists as 2 legally separate lots, as depicted in Plat Cabinet 10, slide 311. Those lots were subdivided in 2011, and both of those lots would be under the ownership of the applicant. So this conditional use, again, it would take place upon both of those lots. You have 330 North Broadway to the west, and then that is the primary structure. And then you have that unaddressed lot to the east, which fronts on North Court Street, and that serves as the parking lot. So our ordinance does outline some specific standards for uses defined as professional offices. They must be consisting of a low-traffic office providing services rather than sales or production, which would require deliveries, inventories and vehicles other than automobiles. And to satisfy the requirement of low traffic, an office must have limited staff, including the professionals, and a limited number of clients during the course of an average workday. So given the proposed nature of this use, staff does find that it would not require any vehicular deliveries. It would not consist of manufacturing or retail. It would exclusively offer those services, and it would not require the use of any vehicles other than automobiles coming in and out. Staff also finds that it would meet the requirement for a limited number of staff as a professional office. It has been stated that it would not employ more than 7 stylists at any one time, and you are not typically looking at more than 4 staff on any one shift on site at any one time. So as it regards that requirement for low traffic office, if you estimate traffic based on the number of chairs or that maximum staff with 7, you can anticipate this use to generate a relatively low scale of traffic. I'm assuming that the use hosted, its absolute largest shift with 7 staff, 1 for each chair, and that every chair generated 1 client per hour, then you're looking at most at 7 to 21 trips per hour. And so the typical threshold that we as staff look for what would constitute major traffic would be 100 trips or more at peak hour. And so with this kind of absolute maximum of 21, we are looking at a pretty low scale of traffic. One other note here is that North Broadway, as a state-maintained road that does handle a lot of traffic, it can be expected to host the amount of traffic that this use would generate. So with the establishment of this conditional use permit, there are some site improvements that we as staff recommend. The zoning ordinance makes the provision that the granting of a conditional use permit does not exempt the applicant or the project site from meeting all of their zoning requirements. And staff did identify some elements of the site that would need to be addressed with the establishment of this permit. And staff does point out, we find that this is particularly important because this use is adjacent to residential homes and because there would be a certain degree of commercial traffic accessing the site. Conditional use permits should be policed so as not to generate any effects or nuisances to the surrounding area. And so here we kind of have a color-coded map showing all the improvements that would need to be made that we have identified as staff. So one in the red is we would need clear demarcation and painting of parking spaces. And all of these items are listed out in more detail in the staff report as well. Number 2, in the blue, the parking area would need to be paved because gravel can generate dust particulates in the air, and the way our code is written right now, vehicular use area cannot be gravel. 3, the ordinance, the landscape and land use buffer ordinance requires landscape buffers when a vehicular use area is adjacent to a residential zone. And while you do have some trees there, the way that those are spaced out and currently exist, they do not meet the exact standards of that reg. Number 4, generally speaking, we do not want higher intensity traffic going through a lower intensity neighborhood street. And so in the case of North Court Street here, you can see that entrance to the east there. And because this is a commercial use, we do recommend a condition that this use should not be accessed from North Court Street. And then lastly, we as staff do believe that the 2 lots in question here should be consolidated because it may be problematic to have one use inhabiting 2 lots. So some closing analysis and findings. We as staff do find that the proposal is suited to the surrounding area. It would provide a benefit to the public welfare. It would meet the requirements for uses defined as a professional office. We also find with appropriate conditions, it would not negatively impact the surrounding area. And establishment of this permit would necessitate that the project site be brought into alignment with all current standards so as to prevent any potential disturbances to those surrounding neighborhoods. So findings, proposal is for a hair salon defined as a professional office, which is an allowable conditional use in the R2 zone. This new separate conditional use permit is required because the existing permit will dissolve with that transfer of ownership. The scale of the use would not change under this new permit or this new ownership. There are those 2 project sites as depicted on that subdivision plat from 2011. Because there are 2 properties and both relate to this use, this conditional use permit would need to account for both properties. The proposal would meet the standards for the conditional use defined as professional office in the R2 zone. Properties along North Broadway from which this use would be primarily accessed are generally commercial in nature. The low-scale commercial use aligns with the character of the surrounding area, which is that unique mix of commercial uses in residential neighborhoods. The existing secondary access by way of North Court Street may create issues as it relates to higher intensity traffic passing through lower intensity residential zones. The 2 properties may need to be consolidated because they both serve the same primary conditional use. And the vehicular use area under current regulations requires additional screening, clear demarcation of parking spaces, and paving. And so given findings and analysis, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit for a salon defined as a professional office for the 2 lots depicted in Plat Cabinet 10, Slide 311. And should the board approve this application, staff does recommend the following conditions of approval. We have our 3 standard conditions for all conditional use permits, and then we get into the more unique ones. Number 4, there shall be no on-street parking in relation to the use. 5, appointments with patrons shall be by appointment only and shall not exceed 1 guest per 1 station or chair on site at any one time. 6, there shall be no more than 7 staff on site, 1 for each salon service station at any one time. 7, the development plan shall be submitted to staff, clearly meeting all of those requirements that we went over earlier. And staff does recommend that this development plan should be submitted to staff within a year of the date of issuance of the permit. 8, before that development plan is submitted, the two lots should be legally consolidated into a single lot. And lastly, the use should not be accessed from North Court Street. The owner of the site shall direct all clientele to access the site by way of North Broadway instead of North Court Street. So that is all we have as staff on this one. Does the board have any questions for us at this time?
For the consolidation, is that just something that they do with planning and zoning, or would that have to come before us again?
So that could be reviewed ministerially.
Okay.
It would not need to come back before the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
On the front page, you said it was B2 and B3. On our paperwork here, it's B1.
B1?
Can you clarify that, please? I know up there it's B2, but in the stuff that we have, it says B1.
As it relates to the surrounding zoning?
Yes.
It is B2. My apologies.
And I have a question on, two questions, actually. On your non-conforming issue number 4,
Yes,
about
ma'am.
the access from North Court, what's the preference as to how to do that? I mean, what it says here is, roadway design and location or signage. I mean, up on your map where you showed the line across court, is there not something more specific, like is it blocked off with fencing or with landscaping or something like that? I mean, I understand that it's encouraged not to use it, but how do you protect the residents
Yes,
and the
ma'am.
traffic without some specific guideline?
So the ordinance basis for that recommendation as staff is the subdivision regulations, section 1000A3. And in that section, it states that through traffic shall be discouraged in residential neighborhoods where feasible through techniques such as signage and roadway design and location. And so the way that that regulation is written, and with the fact that these are existing conditions where that entrance from North Court already exists, we as staff did not want to overstep what we recommended in terms of access. So that's why we conditioned that access should be discouraged, but not necessarily that it needs to be closed off entirely.
Okay, and I have one other question, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
On stuff that you gave us, where you've got the breakdowns here, where it shows the 100 feet and it goes out to everybody,
Yes, ma'am.
it shows here a 345 North Court that is not in the distribution, and I couldn't find it anywhere in the PBA either. Is there such an animal as a 345 North Court?
A 345 North Court?
Yeah, it's right here on the drawings in the center, but there's nothing in the mailing that was sent out. I'm just trying to figure out if it really does exist.
It doesn't show a property division either. It doesn't show a property
Yeah, it
division.
doesn't. It shows 340 North Broadway, and then to the right it shows 345 North Court.
So I see what you're talking about, and looking at the list of notices that went out, I do not believe that we sent anything to that address. I don't think that there's any residents there.
Then where did we get 345?
I'm not certain. That would be the way that our GIS department generates those mailing lists and those maps.
As long as we know, as long as we're aware that there's not somebody who didn't get notified to come.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Is there anybody here that would like to speak for or against this application that signed in? If not, is there a motion on the floor?
I would like to speak.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I'm Jennifer Baldwin, the one that wants to purchase this property. And I just wanted to ask the board to consider, some of the findings that he wrote weren't exactly correct about salons. We don't have clients every hour. Typically, our clients are with us for 2 to 3 hours, so the traffic is much lower than even what he described, because the traffic doesn't come and go. They stay with us for several hours. And most hairdressers typically are typical part-time. We don't work 40 hours a week because we have long hours. So there are really mostly only 3 to 4 of us in the salon at a time. Everyone has families and they work different hours. And then I also wanted to ask if they would consider, or if there was any other options about the parking, because where we can definitely mark off the property and do that, paving it would be a whole other situation. And where we're purchasing this property temporarily, and this conditional use to use as our salon, one day we had planned on possibly living there. So we were concerned about later, 10 years down the road, if we wanted to make it our residence, then we would have that large paved area in the back. We were just curious if anyone had complained about any dust or anything with that gravel, because she has had that for 10 years and had about the same amount of employees and everything that I would have.
No, the people that, who on staff made this determination? I'm trying to figure out, we're trying to figure out like why the first conditional use that was approved, like what the difference is between now that.
Do you mind if I step on the photo here? Sorry. I'd just like to speak in the mic. Yeah, and so because this is its own separate conditional use permit, with the establishment of this permit, I'll read on it as staff, and it was confirmed with Holden and our senior planners as well. Our read on it as staff is that because this is a separate new use permit, it should be brought into compliance with all standards, regardless of what that existing site condition or what was previously approved may have been. In terms of where the language for the paving of the vehicular use area came from, where that suggestion came from, that is from section 2.73C of our zoning ordinance. And that requirement states that parking, loading, and unloading spaces and the access thereto shall be surfaced in a manner adequate to eliminate dust and mud. And so the literal interpretation of that article and the way that we have interpreted it as staff is that, for the vehicular use area to be surfaced in a manner adequate to eliminate dust, that would exclude gravel from being used as vehicular use area. Because when a vehicle drives over it, it would kick that dust into the air. So that is our literal interpretation of that requirement as staff. If the board disagrees or does not see that fit, that is at your discretion.
Is that an ordinance change since the current cup was approved?
No, ma'am, not to my understanding.
No. We've got
Is there anybody on the board that'd like to make a comment about it?
Yeah. So, did you all explain to her that it had to be paved, or, because it seems like she thinks that it didn't have to be paved because she may want to stay there, and I agree with you, she didn't want it paved, but, so was that explained, because you approved it, but did you say I approve it without it, but it has to be paved?
In relation to this current
Yes.
application?
Yes.
So with that condition of approval, to the effect of it would need to be paved, that is us as staff essentially saying, yes, we recommend approval, but we also recommend that it be paved. As to what previous staff may have thought 10 years ago, I'm not certain what their line of thinking was.
Yeah, I was thinking about her, because I understand she's saying if they decide to move there and make it into a house, then now they got this big pave there. So that's when I was asking, did you all kind of explain that? So you explained it to me, I understand.
So when staff packets go out and reports for applications go out, we do send those reports to the applicant. And so hopefully she would be aware of that, as it is our intent to notify her of that.
Would the staff be amenable to the idea of adding another condition that at the 1-year time frame, there's an evaluation of whether or not there has been dust? So that you could determine one way or the other as to whether or not to enforce that paving in the second year?
Yes, that's at the board's discretion.
If we do that, does the paving of the area make number one, the parking demarcation, like not impossible, but less?
Yeah, you can't really mark,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
So I don't know how they would mark the
good
gravel.
point, yeah.
And then I'm assuming that there needs to be landscape too, right? There's a landscape buffer.
Yes, sir. So
That would change that, but
yeah, the landscape buffer would not be changed by whether that vehicular use area is paved or not. But
I'm open to discuss the gravel part just fine, but how would the parking demarcation be done, or what options would you have? You have to go right ahead.
We should definitely, it has been marked off.
Yeah, we paint lines, there's lines.
Okay.
And as long as you repaint them every 3 months or so, then they stay
There's
very
always been
recognizable.
lines.
So you would be okay to the painting demarcation on the gravel?
Absolutely.
It's already there.
Okay.
You may not be able to tell on the UVA photos, but they've always been lined.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think that's a fine idea.
Make the condition on a year?
We're
Yeah.
required to review these on an annual basis, and so if we've got complaints, which frankly we've not had in the past, so I can't really imagine there would be here either.
I think that's fair. If they can maintain the parking demarcation, I think that's fine. As part of the plan.
Is there a motion on the floor? Do we still need to talk about it some more?
No. I move that we approve the staff recommendation, staff has recommended, with adding a condition that there be specific attention paid at the first year to the question of paving and gravel impact upon the neighborhood.
A second.
Is
Who that, Sam?
no, that was
no.
Frank.
Frank.
Oh, Frank?
Frank
Okay.
the second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Did you
Thank
have
you.
any other questions?
Give me.
Had my husband asked.
You have to sign in. It should be up right up there. And then he's got to swear you in.
Oh, you've already finished this. Are you just asking a question?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, he doesn't really need to be sworn to ask a question.
Okay.
I just needed to know, because I'm hard of hearing, so you're saying at the 1 year mark, you'll revisit it, and if there's no complaints, we won't have to pave it, but if there's a complaint, we may be on the hook for $40,000 in 1 year? I mean, that's what my question is can we not get it approved, just grandfathered in the way it was, as gravel, and keep the lines painted, and, because I just feel at risk, a big risk at the 1 year mark, that our business plan will be shot with that addendum added to it. So that's my only question. Thank you.
Reasonable question.
Well, one of the conditions is already that they have to submit the development plan.
If I can just explain one thing, even without that condition, state law requires conditional use permits to be reviewed on at least an annual basis. So without the condition, if a year from now, staff gets out and reviews it and dust is a problem, the board can come back in and add paving to it. So even without the condition, you've got that, frankly, I think a relatively small risk, because we've got conditional uses all over, and I frankly don't recall a single one having to pave. And I don't recall ever having any enforcement because somebody's got a dust problem.
I know.
So you know, basically spray it every now and then, and you know, keep it. I mean, and obviously I can't guarantee that, but I've done this for 40 years and I haven't seen one. So.
Thank you all. Thank you, guys. Next application, please.
So the next application is 223 East Jackson Street. And Mr. Sims, did you want to go ahead and speak to the issue you had run into with this one?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Harold Sims, I represent Corinne Trimble. She's the owner of the property at 322 East Jackson Street. Most recently, this property was had been three shotgun home lots that the college owned, and the houses and classrooms that were once on them had been long ago torn down. The one college building on the corner that they also sold at the same time still remains a residence that sits at the corner of Mulberry and East Jackson. Ms. Trimble's property, she purchased all three lots and consolidated them for one building lot. The property on the corner of South Hamilton and Jackson Street actually faces the South Hamilton side of the property, and entrances. It's a thin lot but very deep that runs would be more conducive to fronting off of the South Hamilton Street like the rest of the houses there. Ms. Trimble had filed an application with the board to get a variance of the front setback line from 30 feet to 20 feet. The notices went out as 30 feet to 20 feet. It's on the agenda as a 30 feet to 20 foot variance. A couple of weeks ago, and this is by and large due to my error in measuring, we were having trouble getting a surveyor over there, and I did some measuring myself. Found out today when I worked with a surveyor that the actual starting point of Ms. Trimble's line is not it's not on the curb with the street, it's on the other side of the sidewalk about a foot. So on my, I had made a request to modify our request. Ms. Trimble thought the 20 foot setback was gonna be too close to the street. She didn't need the whole 10-foot variance she was requesting based upon my measurements. And then, so we modified it, asked the staff to consider it a 25-foot setback, but the notices and everything went out as a 20-foot setback. Well, today when I met with the surveyor, I'm going to pass out this presentation will work a little bit better for us to show you some pictures. These three flags here will show the various setbacks from the house, locations of the house next to it. This would be a 20-foot setback closest to the street. The second flag is a 25-foot setback, and the third flag is what the board is, or what the regulations are at 30 foot. Ms. Trimble, her desire, her desire was twofold. She wanted to create a little bit more space in her backyard for a patio, some area, and then she also wanted the house to be consistent with the line of the house next to her, since she would be the only other house in this section between Mulberry and Hamilton Street. She didn't want it, she kind of wanted it to line up with the house next to her. The houses across the street on East Jackson Street all line up in a line. And I have brought a graphic that shows the relative location of the other houses on Jackson Street, both on her side and across the street. The big open lot here is Miss Trimble's lot. This is the house on the corner. And you'll notice the other houses in this section between Mulberry and Jackson, they all have basically the same front line and about the same depth of the back of the back line of the property. The purpose of her requesting the setback, as I've said, was twofold. She wanted to get some little more additional space in the backyard for some patio. It backs up to an interesting lot that there's a house on the property behind it, but it kind of sits in the middle of a big lot in the back. Charlie, I think you back up to it maybe from Southampton. It kind of sits, it's not very close to the back of Miss Trimble's property at all. It kind of sits in the middle of a big lot. The staff, in this case, they recommended that the 25-foot variance not be granted because they didn't think that her desire to have a bigger backyard was the reason that should be impacting the neighbors, and that it would not be consistent with the backyards of the other properties in the neighborhood. But I think you can see from the properties across East Jackson Street, and the only other property on this section of East Jackson Street on the north side between, because the rest of it is college going on up the street. This would make it more consistent than putting the property, if you look on the one that has the 3 flags, if we stay at the regulation, the front yard of this house is going to be halfway down the side of the house next to it. Or if we could get the 20-foot setback, we could put it the front of her porch, because she's going to have a covered porch on this, kind of a wraparound porch on 2 sides of this property. But the front porch of the house is all you could extend past the setback line. If we could get a 20-foot setback, the front of her porch would be consistent with the front porch of the house next to us on Mulberry. So while I understand that the staff's recommendation that it would not be just wanting to have a bigger backyard would not be a reason enough. We don't violate any other of the reasons for variance. It's not a situation that was created by something she did beforehand. She is building the house. Nothing's built there now, and she's trying to get some assistance from the board to be able to locate the front of her house consistent with the property next to her and the only other house that's in this section of East Jackson Street. I know that was a little disjointed. If anybody has any questions, I'll be certainly entertained.
Just one little bit of history to it. Where she's requesting is actually where the 2 houses that the college took down, that's where their front doors and front porches were. So this is actually going back historically where that neighborhood has always been. Set this back to regular, with all due respect, but setting this back like a new development would be utterly out of character with the neighborhood.
That's what I was
They have
thinking.
small front yards. They have what little yards we've got. They're in the back. They're not in the front. So I
thinking.
just from a bystander in the neighborhood, it may not be a detailed following of KRS 243, but the fact is it is consistent with the neighborhood, what it's been for hundreds of years until they tore down those 2 houses in the late 90s or Yeah, probably late 90s.
So she's bringing it, so if she build there, she's gonna have it even with the other houses?
Yeah,
It's
but
just-
with the one house that now remains in that section.
The one house, right,
Yes.
right, with the
Yeah.
one house,
That-
it will
that-
be
that's-
inconsistent,
yes,
it will
that's
be
the little
consistent with
white
that
on the
house.
corner.
Yes.
She's adjacent to
Yes, it will
that. And
be-
all those three houses that used to be there, all lined up, or I couldn't tell you, but 12 feet or so
Yeah.
from the sidewalk.
Well, there's the ones across the street too.
Oh, they're all in perfect alignment too. And with small front yards, most of the yards, whatever they have, is in the back.
Yeah,
If you look closely at the picture of the houses across the street, some of those that are lined up in that line have porches, and their front lines are all lined up. That's what's making their front line and she's not trying to stick, she's not gonna stick her porch out, and it's gonna be lined up with the front porch at the front of the line of the house next door to her.
and can I ask why did staff deny, it's just because of the statute, the reason staff denied it? Excuse me.
I'll let Noah answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. So I just wanted to allow Mr. Sims to clarify how that proposal had changed, because it was originally noticed, as he said, as 20 feet. That was originally applied for as 20 feet. Then it was amended to 25, and then today it was found that should be amended back to 20. But I can go through my presentation here and kind of touch on the major points of why we believe as staff that the recommendation should be denial. So I'll just get into some of our points of analysis here. We as staff found that there are no circumstances which are unique to the lot, and KRS 100-243 requires that there must be special circumstances which are unique to the property, and I'll actually just go read that real quick. Before any variance is granted, the board must find that the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. In making these findings, the board shall consider whether A, the requested variance arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the same vicinity or in the same zone. B, the strict application of the provisions of the regulation would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land or would create an unnecessary hardship on the applicant. And C, the circumstances are the result of actions of the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulations from which relief is sought. And then lastly, the board shall deny any request for a variance arising from circumstances that are the result of willful violations of the zoning regulation by the applicant subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulations from which relief is sought. And so I just wanted to read off the entire slide there. As it relates to that recommendation of denial, the 2 points that were the basis for the recommendation of denial were 1A, the variance arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the vicinity or in the same zone. And then 1B, the strict application of the regulation would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land. And so, seen here, we as staff find that there are no circumstances which are unique to the lot. There is no limitation on buildable area that would not be seen in the case of any other R2 zone lot of similar size. Things like floodplain, double frontage, easements, or changes of grade. We also find that this lot is larger than most properties in the surrounding neighborhood. And so the circumstances in question afford this home considerably more yard space and buildable area than the typical lots in the general vicinity. So we find that there are no atypical circumstances on this lot which would have the capacity to create hardship. And so that's the first part of that recommendation of denial. And secondly, as it relates to hardship and reasonable use, we find that the strict application of the front yard setback regulation would not deprive reasonable use in this case. Adherence to the setback regulation would not deprive that reasonably sized backyard or privacy. There are guaranteed allowances in terms of yard size allowance and privacy as it relates to minimum setback provisions in the R2 for properties that meet that minimum lot size. And so we, as staff, find that reasonable use of the property would have been accounted for when those requirements for the R2 zone were implemented. Reasonable size of a backyard and privacy would be an intended result of the setback regulation when it is applied to a lot of this size that does not have unique circumstances. So in this case, denial of the front yard setback reduction would not create hardship for a lot of intended dimension within this zone. And so to kind of round it out in relation to KRS 100-243-1, we as staff find that it would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. It would not alter the character of the general vicinity. And we do find that it would create unreasonable circumvention, just in the sense that it does not meet 1A and 1B of KRS 100-243. We find is that if state statute does not support the variance, then the variance would create unreasonable circumvention. And so, as just closing analysis to staff's position, there are no on-site circumstances that would reduce buildable area or have the capacity to create hardship. And because there are no unique circumstances that would create hardship, we as staff find that the property should be held to the same standard that would be applied to any and all other R2 zoned properties. So in terms of findings, the project site is a 0.362 acre property zoned R2. That proposal is for a variance, and it's just been amended by Mr. Sims to reduce the minimum R2 front yard setback from 30 feet to 20 feet. We find that the proposal would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, but we do find that it does not arise from special circumstances because this is an R2 property of typical size and there are no other factors on site that would reduce buildable area.
Jimmy, could I see those again?
And lastly, we find that strict application of the front yard setback requirement would not create hardship. Any other R2 zoned lot of this size would have a backyard of the same dimension as a result of meeting setback regulations. And so we as staff do recommend denial of the requested variance on the basis that it does not meet the standards of KRS 100-243. And we have our standard conditions there, no unique conditions recommended for this application. Does the board have any questions for staff?
So it is 20 feet that's proposed, correct?
Yes.
Which would be the green line in this photo and the last flag, correct?
First flag.
Or the first flag, yes.
It would be the flag that lines up in front of
The
that.
closest
Right.
to the road.
They're trying to go
And
to
also the green line.
Right.
That's the 20-footer.
Yes.
Okay. You want to see that again?
On the drawing with the lines on it?
Yeah. That's the 20, the green line is the 20
No,
foot.
I'll be honest with you, I put that in at 25. But you have to remember, my original part of the story was,
Right.
I was 5 feet off.
Right.
Because of I measured from the curb, sidewalk, and the line, the surveyor tells me the front line of this property actually is a foot inside the sidewalk, so all my stuff was 5 feet off, so that's why the 25 looks like 20.
But it's, but
It is, by the surveyors,
this is
there,
the
when
20.
I was with him when he marked it, say, that's 20, that's 25, and 30.
Well, then, yeah, the green should be 20 because it went to the front of that house, or close to it.
I understood it already. I understood it. I don't know why you can't.
Is this one of their, Charlie?
Just because it got big, I think we gotta go back further.
You can see how
That don't make sense.
Yes,
Is this one of these instances you taught me about in the past where approving it creates a nonconformity?
well, and I think, quite frankly, it does. This is a historic neighborhood, and this will be the only house that's set back to a modern standard. And I think, frankly, it'll look silly.
It will.
All the other houses are close to the street. They're all consistent with what he's asking for. In fact, my house is probably even closer than what he's asking for. So, I mean, they didn't make big front yards. Today's standards, you try to get bigger front yards. Well, that does not fit this neighborhood. So that's why I think, plus, if you look at the standards in 243, it says these are the factors to be considered. Well, in an old neighborhood, they may not be the most applicable standards to look at.
And that was kind of what I was thinking, just because, because this house is gonna be sitting back off the street.
It's gonna be sitting way
when
back,
it could
yeah.
be up with the rest of the houses, and it doesn't matter how big the lot is. It shouldn't matter how big, just because the lot is bigger,
Yeah.
don't mean that the house had to go further back into the lot. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear there's no hardship in any of that stuff.
Right.
But you're gonna have an inconsistency in the neighborhood.
Right.
Unless the variance is given, and I think that's a reasonable
Right.
consideration. And of course, all that being said, and I live in the neighborhood, so you disregard whatever I say,
I
but.
don't know. I agree with you, Charlie.
Are there any other questions? Or does anybody else would like to speak? Or do we have a motion?
Chair, if I may, just as a counterpoint, this is an undeveloped lot. The way we meet standards is by holding the next development up to our current standards. And I just don't feel that 10 feet between the house that's next door and this is going to create such a funny characteristic as to warrant, again, the granting of the variance. Understanding, of course, respecting the opinions of Mr. Perkins.
But if I may, I do think the, in terms of the house next to it, this is, if you're looking for unique circumstances, and the statute doesn't say that you have to do this, absolutely, it says you shall consider it. In this particular case, the only other house on the street, the only other house on this street, on this side of the street, doesn't honor that setback. It's the setback that we have now. It's a 20-foot setback, and so we want to be consistent with our neighbor. We don't want them necessarily front and back. It makes sense. So I do think there is her application does present some modicum of a special circumstance in that if she doesn't request a variance, she's going to be the house that moved in and is set back off the street, where this would be consistent with not only her house on her side of the street, but the houses on the other side of the street have the same similar size, and she's not gaining. If she gets pushed back, the house next to her will have a larger front yard than hers because her house will be back farther. So I do think in this particular case, Charlie kind of stole my thunder there, is that in this particular situation, the denial of the variance actually creates a circumstance that creates a peculiarity as opposed to the other way around. So I would ask the board to consider a variance in this situation to allow this property to be built out according to other similar houses in the neighborhood to be consistent.
Thanks. All right, board, what are we thinking? So do we have a motion on the floor at all? Do we have a consensus on anything? I do think it'd be a little out of place just looking at it from the top here.
What, you want to have it sitting back farther?
Yeah.
That's what, my, everybody knows it's my thought, because I've already kind of weighed in on that.
Did your findings, did it cover the character of the neighborhood?
Yeah,
Well-
it's part of it.
What was the statement you all made? That it,
Just said that it wouldn't alter the character and that, there's no clear,
if it were denied,
limitation.
but if it were denied, it wouldn't alter it.
No, we did not make that finding. We made the finding that granting of the variance would not detrimentally alter the character or health or safety of the neighborhood.
In the report, it is noted that it would not,
I see what you're saying.
it would not alter the character of the general vicinity. So that, the recommendation of denial was in relation to special circumstances and hardship, finding that there were none.
Okay. I think the one down here, it's, the one here that I guess you're talking about is staff believes that the variance does not arise from special circumstances. That's probably the one that they're probably talking about there.
In fact, the only unique circumstance is that on this particular, it's demolished the house that was.
So,
Otherwise, the neighborhood has changed.
what do you think, Jeremy? You run the show.
Well, guys, so
Yeah.
if we don't have a consensus of what we're thinking about right now, can we disprove, basically? I mean, if it's our job to determine if we approve or deny this, we have the recommendation. What do we have to counter that if we think we should approve it?
The only thing I can think of is that, like I said, staff believes that the variance does not arise from special circumstances, no clear limitation on building area, that kind of thing.
The only special circumstance is the college tore down the house on this lot. Nobody tore down the other houses. I mean, that's the uniqueness here. This had a house on it, the same setback, and it was destroyed or demolished by the college. That's the only change that's been made in this neighborhood in 100 years.
Yeah. And then it also says in that one, there's no clear limitation on buildable area within that lot that would not be seen in the case of any other zone lots of similar size. You know, it does mention that, but.
Well, I think you probably have to say something along the lines of the only unique circumstances, that's the only thing.
You can still address it, yeah.
And that it would not.
I think we're getting closer.
And to move to approve.
And again, fully understanding that houses in the area do sit closer to the road than where this is proposed. Staff's expectation is that if a plan can meet our regulations, then it should meet our regulations. And we understand, again, that the 10-foot is important to the applicant, and that would line it up. But we have ample ability to meet the requirements that we have on the books today when the lot is purchased by this owner. And so just, I caution granting this variance with the idea being that it just puts it in line with the other houses. Because in staff's opinion, it's more important to meet our current requirements than it is to line up the block, especially when there's only one house next door on that side of the street currently.
if I may, the variance is on the books to allow there to be some reasonable accommodations for situations that arise that make things better for the applicant, better for the neighborhood. In this particular case, we're bending over backwards to satisfy a regulation that was created when the setback was changed. When these houses were built, when the neighborhood was designed, the setbacks were non-existent and everybody just lined up. Now setbacks come along and we're being asked to be the odd duck out. And it just doesn't seem that the variance undermines any public integrity by just saying, okay, we're making everybody be consistent, even though it doesn't seem to satisfy the neighborhood. The staff doesn't want to believe that 10 feet makes a difference, but I think when you drive down the street, there'll be a setback there. What's going on there? How come? When was this house built? I think Ms. Trimble she has a desire to build a house that's going to be compatible with the neighborhood, and she's going to some great expense to do that. Bought 3 lots, and now because her lot she happened to have bought a bigger lots, which you really couldn't build much on with the 3 lots individually. There's a little bit of a penalty factor going on here that she can't be consistent with the neighborhood because she has to sit back more. I think the variance allows the overall integrity of the neighborhood to be maintained if it's granted, and I urge you to consider it.
Thank you, sir. Or any further along? We have a motion on the floor.
Special circumstance would be the only house in the neighborhood that's been demolished. That's the special circumstance. You need
Well,
to
then
say
you need to
what
word
that
it
is.
instead of me.
Well, no, just add to that, which is, this is the only property in the neighborhood where the house has been demolished.
How is that relevant to the special
Because
circumstance?
that's why you're trying to line it up, to keep the character of the neighborhood. That needs to be your motion, not mine.
No.
Do you have a question, or you want to make?
Well, he just doesn't like the way I worded it.
Oh,
What are you thinking, Jenny?
All right, I move that we approve the application because it would not alter the character of the neighborhood, and I believe the variance does arise from special circumstances.
That's the one I was thinking of. Special circumstances are the word the 2 that come out, that pop out to me.
we have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next application, please.
We see.
All right, third application on the agenda for tonight is a conditional use permit for 1007 Delaplane Road. The file number is G202622. The proposal is a conditional use permit for outdoor storage in the I-1 zoning district. That location is Delaplane Road. The existing zone is I-1. Surrounding zones are I-1 and A-1. The site acreage is 11.18 acres. And direct access to this storage site is internal through a private drive on the site, and the site itself is accessed from Delaplane Road. Staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. So you can see here the zoning map. You can see the I-1 and the A-1. And this here is a closer up aerial of the site. That red star there is the proposed area for this storage. So some background. Siren Holdings is applying for this conditional use permit for outdoor storage to be located on this I-1 zone property at 1007 Delaplane Road. It is going to be located on a parking area, and the development plan for this parking area was approved as a Planning Commission application in April of this past year. At time of consideration of that proposal, this outdoor storage use was not indicated officially on development plans, though it was discussed. At the time of the writing of the report and this presentation tonight, that final development plan is under review by Commission staff. So you can see here the conditional use plan. It is also included at the back of that section in your packet. That might be helpful for your reference as we go forward here. So some details on the proposal scale. This proposal would utilize the 12,944 square foot overflow parking lot that was approved in that commission case, and it would temporarily use that parking lot for these storage units. The timeline for this proposed outdoor storage use would be contingent on the demand for the additional parking that parking lot is intended to accommodate. These storage units would be leased out to independent contractors as separate tenants, and they would use each of these storage units for the storage of equipment, tools, parts, and things of that nature. These storage units have been indicated, it's been indicated that they would be installed in phases, beginning with 2 to 5 containers, and then gradually increasing that number up to a maximum of 10 to 15 containers total. Each of these containers would be 40 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 8.5 feet high. And at time of final phase installation, depending on whether you have 10 or 15 or some number in between, these crates would take up 3,200 to 4,800 square feet. So seen here are some visual references provided by the applicant, so you have an idea of what those C-Connex containers look like. And so as it relates to this use specifically, Section 453C of the zoning ordinance lists outdoor storage as a conditional use in the I-1 zoning district. And that article requires that the following 4 conditions are met. 1, the storage needs to be incidental and accessory to the principal use of the property. 2, the storage area shall not be visible from any right-of-way or adjacent area of different zoning classification. 3, it pertains to number 2, screening must be imposed so that the storage area would not be visible from other properties. And lastly, the storage area boundaries must satisfy the minimum setback requirements of the zone. And so staff has applied these criteria to this application to determine if the proposal meets those requirements. So that first requirement is storage incidental and accessory to the principal use of the property. The primary principal use of the site is that existing 72,000 square foot building. The proposed storage area upon this 12,994 square foot parking area would be dimensionally secondary to that primary existing use. As to whether this is accessory to the primary use, the zoning ordinance defines accessory structure or use as any structure or use other than the principal structure or use directly incidental to or required for the permitted use of any premises. And so staff finds that this proposal would meet that requirement for being directly incidental to the principal use of the property. So that second and third provision, that question of if the storage area would be visible from adjacent properties of different zones or from the right-of-way, and then if so, can the screening mitigate that? You can see here, pictures taken from staff's site visit to that proposed storage area location. To start off, that proposed storage area site is about 500 feet south from the right-of-way of Delaplane Road. And so the primary building essentially screens this storage area so that it is not visible from Delaplane. There are no adjoining properties of different zones to the south, west, or north, and to the east, there is that A1 adjoining property, but you can see that top right photo, you have that existing mature tree line that would screen any visibility of this storage area from that property. And so as a result of the existing enclosure of mature vegetation, as well as the screening that the building itself naturally provides, staff does find that the project site would not require further screening if this use were to be approved. And that last question of if the storage area would be able to meet minimum I-1 setbacks, typical I-1 minimum setbacks are 50 feet from the front, 50 feet from the rear, and 25 feet from the side. This proposed area is adjacent to the western side yard, but it does not encroach on that setback line. So it would meet this requirement. So lastly, some other items of consideration. This application does include the temporary filling of approved interior landscaped island areas with crushed stone. That preliminary development plan for the parking lot would have been required to include those interior landscaped areas. But that provision of the Landscape and Land Use Buffer Ordinance, Article 622, does specifically provide that outdoor storage areas in industrial zones are not required to install interior landscape islands. And so once this area makes the transition from the outdoor storage area to that originally planned parking lot, that interior landscaping would need to be installed. So because of the temporary nature of this use, staff does also suggest a condition of approval that the applicant must return to the board in 1 year from the date of issuance of the permit with an update on the intended timelines for this temporary use of outdoor storage. And then lastly, because this proposal would alter the previously approved conditions of that development plan for the parking area, we are conditioning that if the use permit is approved, the amended development plan needs to be submitted to reflect this proposed use. It would need to show things like the layout of the storage crates, the number of crates, the phases in which they intend to install them, things of that nature. So when you have that change in use, you typically want to see the development plan accompanying it. And so some closing analysis and findings. This proposal would meet all requirements for uses defined as outdoor storage. It would be subordinate to the existing primary use. It would benefit the public economic welfare. It would not be visible from other properties or from the road, and it would not affect the surrounding area. Staff's main recommendations are that development plan needs to be filed to reflect this change in use, and that the temporary nature of the use that has been proposed should be enforced through reappearance before the Board of Adjustment. So findings, the project site is 11.18 acre property zoned I-1. The parking lot on which the storage area would be located was approved in PDP 2026-13, though that final development plan is still under consideration, and that parking area is not yet constructed. This proposal is defined as a conditional use for outdoor storage. This proposal, being light industrial in nature, is consistent with the intent of the I-1 zoning district. The proposal would provide a benefit to public welfare in providing a space for local contractors to do their work. The ordinance, as we went over, has that specific set of standards for outdoor storage areas, and staff does find that the proposal would meet those standards. The site is not located within the floodplain. And 8, this conditional use was not officially considered or presented when PDP 2026-13 came in. And if this application is to be approved, it would require an amendment to the development plan to reflect this change of use. And then lastly, those timeline restrictions would be necessary to enforce the proposed temporary nature of the proposal. And so, given findings and analysis, staff does recommend approval of this request for a outdoor storage conditional use permit for the property addressed 1007 Delaplane Road on the basis that it meets all of the requirements for outdoor storage areas, and with the understanding that that development plan will be filed with staff. We have our standard conditions for conditional use permits, and then we have our specific conditions for this proposal. Firstly, that temporary nature of this conditional use permit will be enforced by the board. The applicant shall reappear before the board in a year from now with an update on the timelines and to renew that permit. 5, that amendment to the development plan shall be filed depicting the location, scale, and users of the storage area. 6, the uses of that storage area need to meet the standards of light industry as defined by the ordinance. 7, all those requirements for outdoor storage areas that we went over. 8, once this outdoor storage area transitions to a parking lot, those interior landscaped islands will need to be installed. 9, any and all stormwater management requirements that might be requested by commission engineers. And then 10, the number of containers on site shall not exceed 15 total as indicated by the applicant. So that is all we have as staff on this one. Does the board have any questions?
Nothing this time. Is there anybody here that needs to speak? Yeah. In this application?
Is there an overall timeline for the not needing these anymore? At all? Anybody? Or is it unknown at this time, which is fine, I'm just curious.
Which is why the 1 year,
Right.
let us come back.
But for right now, it's completely unknown.
Well, if you look at business climate, now I apologize, I'm Jack Connor. The need is there for this kind of facilities, and that potentially could continue on, but also it could not. So, from an economic development.
Yeah, and that's why we as staff included that condition about the timeline and how the permit would come back to the board.
Is there any motion on the floor? No? I make a motion to approve first staff report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all
Yes, all those folks.
Yes, sir.
Had a whole lot of backup now.
All right. So the last application of the night, 514 Maple Street. We have a variance application for both a front yard setback variance and a side yard setback variance to allow for an addition to an existing residential structure with pre-existing non-conforming setbacks to those property lines. The location is 514 Maple Street. The zone is R2. Surrounding zones are also R2. The lot size is 0.2 acres. Direct access is from Maple Street, and staff recommends approval as it regards the front yard setback variance and denial as it regards the side yard setback variance. So you can see the zoning map here. You can see how it is all predominantly R2. And you can see here a zoomed in aerial view. You can see those two setback lines that we have at issue here. You have the side yard setback to the north and the front yard setback to the south. Because this property has double frontage, that southern property line towards Right Alley would be held to a front yard setback, even if it technically, the main frontage is Maple Street. So some background. The applicant is applying for those two variances we discussed to allow for an addition to an existing single-family home on the project site. The project site is a single-family residential lot which predates zoning regulations. And so as a result of its predating zoning regulations, it has those existing non-conforming setbacks. It also has double frontage upon Right Alley and Maple Street. So this proposal is to add a home addition to the rear of the existing residence in line with those existing setback lines for the structure. And so as a result, those variances are needed in order to expand the structure in conformance with the zoning ordinance. So you can see here, this is just a general staff exhibit for visual reference. You can see that proposal that would go towards the rear yard. You can see how it would exist along the same building lines as the existing house. And so as a result, it would need that 4.1 foot setback to the north and the 24-foot setback to the south. And so the house, because it has those non-conforming setbacks, it is considered to have existing non-conforming status. The zoning ordinance does state that a non-conforming structure shall not be enlarged except in conformance with the zoning ordinance. And so in this case, staff finds that the setback variances are required in order for this non-conforming structure to be enlarged in a legal manner, which would constitute conformance with the zoning ordinance. Per a recently performed survey on the project site, that north side yard setback is 4.1 feet and the south front yard setback is 24 feet. And in the schedule of dimension area regulations, minimum R2 setbacks are 7.5 feet for the side yard and 30 feet for the front yard. So KRS 100-243, findings necessary for granting variances. I read this earlier, so I'll try to be brief. The board must find that the granting of the variance will not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of zoning regulations. The board shall consider whether the requested variance arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the vicinity or the same zone. B, the strict application of the provisions of the regulation would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land or would create an unnecessary hardship on the applicant. And C, the circumstances are the result of actions of the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulations from which relief is sought. And then lastly, the board shall deny any request for a variance arising from circumstances that are the result of willful violations of the zoning regulation. And so as it relates to KRS 100-243-1A, that question of if special circumstances exist, staff finds that the project site does have that double frontage upon both Wright Alley and Maple Street, and that is an uncommon circumstance. The double frontage for the project site does dictate that this lot must meet front yard setbacks to both of the streets it fronts on. And as a result of that double front yard setback, the buildable area on the lot is considerably reduced in meeting both of those setbacks. So as it relates to the front yard setback towards Wright Alley, staff finds that the variance does arise from those special circumstances that do not generally apply to land in the same vicinity or in the same zoning district. So as it relates to the side yard setback specifically, staff does find that that unique circumstance of double frontage is not directly applicable because this property boundary does not directly front upon that secondary street frontage. So, and this last circumstance is applicable to both variances. The age of the home itself is also a unique circumstance. It was created before the implementation of zoning standards. As a result, it doesn't meet those setbacks, and this reality does not apply to most R2 lots. So as it relates to hardship under KRS 100-243B, the buildable area of the lot is reduced as a result of those unique circumstances. The front yard setback directly arises from those, the front yard setback variance directly arises from those unique circumstances, which would otherwise create hardship. If you were to strictly apply the minimum front yard setbacks to this proposed addition, the applicant would essentially have an unconventionally narrow or thin home, which would not be in keeping with the existing character of the home, lot, or neighborhood. Staff does find that the strict application of the front yard setback would deprive reasonable use. It would create hardship because structural additions or residential additions to existing single-family homes are a generally common practice in residential properties as circumstances change over time, and the need for infill development is indicated in the comprehensive plan as it relates to residential properties. And so, as it relates to the side yard setback variance specifically, it is found that denial would not create hardship because that difference between a 7.5 foot building line and a 4.1 foot building line would not considerably reduce the dimension of the proposed home addition. If the home addition were to be placed upon a 7.5 foot setback, it would not considerably reduce the dimension of the proposed expansion in the same way that a 30-foot front yard setback would reduce the dimension of this proposed expansion. And so staff also finds that the granting of this front yard setback variance alone would grant the reasonable use of the property to the point that the side yard setback would not create hardship if it were to be denied. And so this is staff exhibits for general reference. You can see here, this is what that proposal would look like if there were no variances granted. So you've got 7.5 to the north and the 30 to the south. You can see how the dimension of that expansion is kind of unreasonably narrow, and it generally would be a hardship. So seen here is the addition with both setback variances granted, where you have a 4.1 foot setback to the north and a 24 foot setback to the south. And then lastly, this is what staff essentially would recommend with our recommendation of approval of the front yard variance and denial of the side yard variance. You can see here that you get the 24 foot to the south, but you keep the 7.5 to the north. You still grant that reasonable use. You still have a addition to the structure that is in keeping with the character of the home, but that reasonable use is already granted by the front yard setback reduction. So as it relates to health, safety, and welfare, staff met. When it comes to side yard setbacks, there is always that consideration of fire spread. Staff met on the project site with the fire marshal to inspect those safety conditions. The marshal had no issues with this because the structural addition would not further encroach on that north neighboring structure, so it would not worsen any safety conditions. Staff also consulted with code enforcement regarding this proposal, and they similarly did not see any issues as it related to health, safety, or welfare. Regarding the front yard setback, that proposed 24-foot variance would not, it would remain safely removed from the right-of-way of Wright Alley, so it would not create any hazard for drivers. In relation to the character of the surrounding area, staff finds that many of the existing homes on Maple Street and Wright Alley have that long-standing status, and many of them have existing non-conforming front, rear, or side yard setbacks. And so these variances at question here would not alter the character of the surrounding neighborhood. It may preserve the character of the surrounding area because this infill proposal would work within the existing framework of this lot and this neighborhood. So staff believes similarly that this application would not create unreasonable circumvention of zoning regulations. And so to kind of close the presentation here, staff finds that the two setback variances do need to be considered separately. That proposal for a front yard setback would meet the criteria established in KRS 100-243 because that front yard setback variance directly arises from the unique double frontage on the lot, and because denial of that variance would considerably reduce the buildable area of the lot to the point where it would create hardship. On the other hand, as it regards the side yard setback reduction, we as staff find that it does not meet the standards of KRS because it does not directly arise from the unique double frontage on the lot, and because denial of that variance would not considerably reduce buildable area to the point of creating hardship. As a note here, variances typically operate in relation to the minimum amount of relief which would be necessary to grant reasonable use. So therefore, if only one of these two variances would be necessary in order to reasonably grant this infill development proposal, we as staff believe that only the one variance should be granted. And so we recommend approval on that front yard setback with the understanding that it would grant the minimum relief necessary, and we recommend denial on that side yard setback variance because it represents more than the minimum relief that would be needed. And so findings, project site is a 0.2 acre property, zoned R2. Proposal is that variance for continuation of pre-existing non-conforming setbacks to allow for the expansion to the existing home, which includes that 4.2 foot side yard setback and the 24 foot front yard setback. City Ordinance 97003 does make provisions about minimum setbacks and minimum distances between structures, but in section 5 of that document, it does make the explicit provision that any variances necessary to grant this infill proposal would not, would still be, the board would still retain the power to grant variances as it relates to the side yard setback. The marshal and code enforcement did not see any safety issues as it regarded this proposal, though both parties did make the suggestion that this addition to the home should not encroach upon the backyard shed by more than 15 feet. The variance would not affect the public health, safety, or welfare. The variance would not alter the character of the surrounding area, because many other structures in the vicinity have non-conforming setbacks, and the front yard setback variance directly arises from unique circumstances because of that double frontage. The side yard setback does not, because it does not face that street frontage. 9, strict application of the front yard setback would deny reasonable use and create hardship in the form of denying this infill expansion, which is an intended use of a residential zone. 10, strict application of the side yard setback requirement would not deny reasonable use or create hardship because that front yard setback variance would already grant the minimum relief necessary for that reasonable use to be achieved. 11, the comp plan does call for infill development of this nature in existing zones. And lastly, the proposal does not result from any willful violations or circumstances created by the applicant. And so, given the findings and analysis, staff does recommend approval of the variance as it regards the front yard setback on the property addressed 514 Maple Street on the basis that it does meet the standards of KRS 100-243. However, on the other hand, staff does recommend denial of the variance for the side yard setback on the basis that it does not meet the standards of KRS for those reasons that we went over. Conditions of approval, we have our 3 standard conditions for variances. And lastly, that is included at the request of the fire marshal and code enforcement. If the expansion to this home encroaches any closer than 15 feet to the shed in the rear yard, that shed would need to be moved or removed. That is all we have from our perspective as staff. Does the board have any questions for us right now?
What's the cost in square footage for the applicant in terms of what he wants to add onto his house?
That may be a question for the applicant. Would you like to speak to that?
So, sorry, I'm fairly new to all of this. I still have yet to work with the civil engineer to actually get a plan of the layout and then get a bill of material. So all this is just pretty much, I'm just walking through it very slowly. I'm learning a bunch of this as I go. I didn't even know how to get a setback variance on my property. So I don't have questions to that due to the fact that I haven't got with the civil engineer based off this meeting, that if we were gonna get approved for a setback variance, then I was gonna get with him. And most of this is because where I don't have that expertise as a civil engineer, I don't know what all will need to be done to expand the back and to properly support the new roof on the back end. So I'm just walking through it, be honest with y'all, and just going step at a time, going very slowly, just to make sure I don't violate any coding or any laws in the neighborhood.
And did you sign in swearing?
No, sir, I would.
Yeah, I think you might want to.
Oh, do you swear or affirm?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And then just make sure you sign in there too.
Thank you.
I just asked the question because you had 3 different proposals up there in white that probably had some sort of impact on square footage, because they were all different sizes. You
Yes.
know?
Yeah, I think the third one was
That was the recommendation.
that was the
Okay, right?
recommendation,
Yeah.
correct?
That's the third one.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So that is what we as staff recommend. I do not know what the exact square footage would
Right,
look
but
like.
in that case, the shed would have to be moved, because it's probably 15 feet.
So that's a
But not-
general
okay.
exhibit, kind of for the reference of what this would look like with or without those setback variances.
But either way, it has to be the 15 feet
Yeah.
from the
it
building
would-
to the shed.
If this expansion were to be closer than 15 feet to
Okay.
that shed,
Yeah.
it would need to be moved or taken out.
Okay.
Okay, so in order to get the square footage that he would desire and still meet the setbacks, he would probably have to assume that he would lose the shed, or at least have to move it somewhere significantly different.
At this time, I'm not certain. Building inspection would take a look at it, and they would see that condition on the roof variance, and they would be able to enforce it accordingly.
Yep.
That proposed, so I'm only extending the back out 9 feet, and from where 9 feet is from the extension that I want to do, I think it's like 13 or 14 feet away from the shed. If any problems were to occur based off that, the shed is not like just sitting on cylinder blocks, so it could be moved any direction. There is no electricity to it, no nothing, so it could just get kind of towed out the way a little bit, just for everything to be within ordinance.
Okay.
Could you go from 1 to 3 again?
Yes, sir.
1.
Nobody's recommending this one. Just to be clear.
Yeah, that's 2.
I gave
Just
no.
Yeah, that's it, no variances. You're not gonna
Do you have that right now?
Yeah.
That-
So that's if everything's denied.
That's everything.
Okay.
It's no. I gave you a letter and I gave you a long paper of like the plan that I actually want to do.
And then 2 was both accepted.
So this is everything's denied,
Both accepted.
this is everything is granted,
Yeah.
and then this is staff's recommendation.
Actually, I like the
Not necessarily to scale.
Not necessarily just,
I think it looks good. Too, so.
And go back to the third one again?
That's the
That's
third.
third.
I gave you a copy of
Oh, there it is, okay.
The second,
That's one.
bedrooms division
I like the
of
second
what I
one
wanted to expand it into.
with him moving the shed.
I like the third one.
He's gonna have to adjust his plans.
Yeah, and like I said, I like the way the third one looks anyway.
So on the right alley, I was asking more of a setback variance. If you see like where that truck is at, the front section of the house and then that back section, I wanted to actually make that backside wall run parallel with the front. I didn't necessarily want to build it like at 24. I think it was gonna be like 22 feet, somewhere around there.
So you're talking about where that little piece juts out, you wanna take it down, all the way down.
I wanted it to come
All the way down.
like this, and then this is the back end. I just wanted it to come 9 feet, which is about right here.
Would that still be able to be
And
done
then
with
come
the?
out back.
I think it would fall in there, I don't know.
I had a better a picture I can kind of show y'all like of the actual layout that I wanted to do. So essentially, this is what I wanted the house to end up looking like, just a nice rectangle. Try to get away from the curves to allow me to make an easier, more efficient roof without getting too much money.
Where's your existing house in that drawing?
This will be the existing.
Okay, and that's the new?
That would be the new one. I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's all this over, okay, understood.
So it's like 22 feet instead of 24.
Do we have any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
And if the board would like to consider each variance separately, that may be beneficial.
And then, as far as this smaller portion he's talking about, that would either need to be discussed with you if it's within, whether this is approved
Yeah.
as is or
The-
not, to come back for that?
If I'll just, I'll jump in. So the application that's submitted specifically called out the 24-foot setback. That's what staff has reviewed. Again, looking for the minimum relief necessary to facilitate it. Staff still believes that 24-foot, which is the further setback of the structure, is sufficient for the applicant to realize the reasonable use of the property.
And if anything was done that was past that, it would have to come back for.
If they want 22 feet, either you guys have to make the decision now, or staff would need to actually review it.
Is the existing northern part of the house at 4.1?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Then what's the drawback to the extension? If it's already at 4.1?
It's,
Non-conforming.
this is 4 feet.
Uh-huh,
That's very close to the property line.
where they're already at. I mean, they're already at a property line, right?
so again, the language in the ordinance is that over time, or the intention of the ordinance is over time, nonconformities go away. And so in this circumstance, we have the ability to build to the proper, at least staff recommends building to the proper setback. The impacts to the neighbors by being at 7.5 feet versus 4 feet is, I mean, exactly that. It is the applicant meeting our standards because they can. The proliferation of non-conforming structures is something we take very seriously and would highly recommend against in this circumstance. And so what we've tried to demonstrate is that they can meet our setback of 7.5 feet and still have the reasonable use of their property. We believe that it would be more than the minimum relief necessary to facilitate the use to allow them to continue at the 4-foot mark.
And you would get something that would look like photo number 1.
Photo number 1.
Which I think it doesn't look, I think that one looks really good.
And with the proposal you have up there now, with that extension he was talking about, bringing it on down, would that also be in compliance or not? 'Cause
Yeah.
he was saying, that he was talking about bringing it from where the truck is
Yeah.
on down.
Yeah, so the exact same, staff's perspective would still be the same. We believe that 24 feet gives him a reasonable use of the property. 22 feet was not what was reviewed by staff. It was not in the original application. And so we would recommend, as presented, 7.5 feet on the north, 24 on the south.
And if he did bring that out and it changed his plans,
Right.
it could be represented to us if it did encroach on the.
That's what I was asking, right, because of the 24 feet. That's what I was asking, okay.
Well, do we want to do this as what they proposed, or do we want to do it as 2 separate motions?
Do you have any recommendations on that?
The front is good.
You know, since the application was for 24 and it was advertised for 24, I'm a little reluctant to suggest that we go ahead and reduce that.
No, I mean for the, do we need to split motions on this?
Oh, no, I don't think you need to do it. It needs to be clear, but no, it doesn't need to be 2 different motions.
Did you guys have anything else? No. Okay.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we approve based on staff recommendations for the approval of the variance on the front and the denial on the, or you're calling it the side, per staff recommendations.
And that's approval of the 24, not the 22.
Correct, just as it's, which is how it's presented in
How,
the.
yes,
packet,
how it was
correct?
applied, yes, okay.
Just how it's applied in the
Yep.
packet as presented by staff, yes.
Second.
Ursula?
He has a question.
Oh.
Will I be able to do another motion to get the 22 feet, or is it stuck at 24?
You can bring it back,
Right.
Right.
but because we can talk after the meeting.
I think, yeah, you can represent it if you have a new,
That's good. The picture that I showed y'all, I printed out a long form for Noah when I gave it to him, because I was pretty much just trying to give him the idea. I wanted to run with the front wall, just run all the way back.
if you have a new schematic and you have something else that you want to alter after you go to planning and zoning, if it needs to come back before us, it can. Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
1. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Is there anything else that,
Oh,
Anybody?
one thing, Mr. Chairman. How about we take up the same continuance addition to the bylaws, just like we did with the county? Oh, go right ahead. All right, go right ahead.
It seems very recently that we've had, at least with the Scott County Board of Adjustment, a series of continuances.
A rash, I think it's called.
That is peculiar to the Board of Adjustment. the Planning Commission has adopted bylaw language that outlines how continuances are taken up, and then how many times you can continue one application. We've got a couple for tonight as well. So what we're recommending to the Scott County Board of Adjustment is to modify the bylaws to include language specific to continuances, and then from there, Charlie, I'll let you talk about specifics.
What we would do is add a new section to our bylaws. Not that you all spend a whole lot of time reading through our bylaws. But basically, and this will be changed ever so slightly because we already made a couple of changes since we talked about this, but they're just slight clarifications is all. Upon good cause, an application may be continued. No application may be continued for more than 3 months. We started out thinking 3 times. Well, we've already had 6 months or so just on one in the county, so we don't want to do that. 3 months beyond the meeting at which the application is first scheduled to be heard. For example, if it's to be heard in April, it cannot be postponed past July.
So it's the original month plus 3?
Plus 3, 3 months,
So it's
yes.
total 4. Okay.
An application for which a continuance is requested beyond 3 months shall be deemed incomplete and as voluntarily withdrawn. A withdrawn application under this, not ordinarily where somebody just takes it back because they've changed their plans or something, but where it's been withdrawn because of this section for all these continuances, it may not come back for at least 6 months. We've also added on the county one, and you all haven't really looked at it yet, but I've sent this up. The notice requirement for a continuance request must be at least 1 full week in advance of, again, when it's scheduled to be heard. So if it's to be heard on a Thursday, well, in your case on a Monday, it's got to be filed the prior Monday prior to meeting time. So during business hours, the prior Monday, okay? Those are I think all the points that we've got.
How does it read now?
There is no such animal.
Nothing.
That's why, you know,
No limit at all.
Yeah, that's why we try to finesse these things, and it's just getting out of hand. So this actually is our first effort toward a rule on boards of adjustment.
Got it. And
Yeah.
once we get that in writing,
Well, what we'll do is it'll be in your packet next time, because it has to be presented to you one meeting, and then we vote on it the next. So this will be in your packet next time
Yeah, I think that's great.
with the massaging,
Yeah.
And force people to do their jobs.
which is part of the problem. Yes, yes.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, meeting's adjourned.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
Good. I told my wife I'd be home for our anniversary.